So, to explain what that all is in predictive whatever, 732 rewrites all dogmatic confusion regarding most of Hollywood's obtrusion and presentation forward of all archetypes in their obtuse 52 card pickup. Right? That's where that comes from. Where's the joke? Right? Well, joke's on you. Right? Holly go lightly. See it for what it is. Now take that Hollywood sign off the hill. What's there? It's the warehouse where Stanley filmed the moon landings. And he filmed it in 918 mainland China through the doorway of extraterrestrial from outer space gene injection. So Back to the Future, having been quantified as tritely as extraterrestrial parasymbiote pi 202-501-28 space 072517, and that's an arbitrary number attached to pi, right? Why is there an arbitrary number attached to pi? Well, because pi is a construct continuance with only relevance within the construct domain of time. So you take it outside of that and you put it in like the real world outside of its Poincare conjecture of relevance that you've agreed to as being E equals mc squared, flat earth, everything. And so much you are progressively in the economy of engagement. Psychosexually, terrestrial-economically, metaphysically, allegorically, pick your flavor. In every facet, that's pi. Coming in through, in linear time, 918, Back to the Future, here we are. Time is not a factor in engagement logistical assumption about pluralistic expression. And you backflow the psychosexual argument to the Chinese patriarchy, see Jurassic Park, don't consume it outside of my allegory, representation and reification out of the 52 card pickup, slightly at the peak of logic that you would assume about it. You know, Malcolm, Metasystems, Chinese scientists, CCP, controlling the conversation about chaos, i.e. reality, i.e. time as it is history, memory. So we want to reestablish that stone wall where history, there that is. What is this news thing? Well, news is largely now the mainstream media to mask a militario, self-reflexive, fire world garbage thing sauce continuity, and bipocally present a paradoxical choice as if that's not the case, and where this outflows. So these craft flying over the fields, cornfields, X-Files, run on Mercury. The one over the lodge, question mark. Those run on a lower technology, Mercury, right? So that's quadratically capable. Other quadratically capable insofar as this is concerned as, see the Prometheus paradigm, you don't necessarily make bioweaponry that you can't assume in Quintain, right? Such so much as the scalar quadratic logic assumption here, right? Don't make something bigger than Mercury world because they're over that. You're in Fire world at the behest of the Poincare conjecture only. And Perlman's there standing in the jungle of Hollywood, and he looks like the Sasquatch, like the monkey, right? Like Sarah's monkey. He is. He's standing in the field, the open field of physics and reality and history read off the walls, as it's not so necessary the constant high frequency recalibration of confirmation bias, see Dark City, without time in its literal allegorical form, rather than the Matrix. That's why they're filmed on the same set. And so you're eating the popcorn in the Matrix, but you should have watched Dark City instead. But don't get lost in 24 hours, and 9/11 and going back to the future through the allegory refraction maze of logic, because you keep referencing Hollywood, you keep referencing Holly Golightly instead of just outside of any emotional binder in logic flow, right? Time occurs. Logistical assumption falls. Encroachment occurs as the counterparty is encroachment. Right? With the fuselage of empathy. But behind its intent, regardless of pluralistic expression, death. And sadomasochism in the expansion of its equation experienced by humanity. That it then compresses. You see time as a misnomer into itself, absorbing your experience, and see the pineal into a one. Extra dimensional de Sitter space lower within its manifold impression, and flights off into the heavens looking for something else to assimilate. So I want to be silicon, that type of shit, that's where that comes from. I want to be software, you might see that. That's not good. Johnny Depp doesn't want to be nanites in that film, right? We don't want to do that, right? So regardless of the scale of this, look over the lodge. The pluralistic expressions of this include clones, human cloning, see Takeda Pharmaceuticals. I was shadowed by, some very, probably Rolling Stones type of guys into that when I was in and out of there. Also see the other facility down there in Park, Chinese owned. So if you feel like you've experienced interfamilial insertions and almost alien behavior all of a sudden, that's why. And also a Chinese food restaurant in your town, that's why. So let that sink in. And you also have the SR-71 Blackbird of what? Biomechanical synthoid in addition to pluralistic synthetic. Alright, so 322 equals CCP equals Grays equals the boats out of, and Time Not is a misnomer. Bob Dylan is Jimi Hendrix, is Samuel Jackson, is Nitri, is Dodgson. Right? Dodgson wants the genetics, pays for money thing. Right? He's over there. But they're interchangeable. On this other thing at the cantina, right? It's a different place. It's not Jurassic Park. Different entity? No. It's a fluid dynamic data organism in actual reality expression. So get out of the allegory and use my re-affinity and re-expression of and resorting of the deck You know, with the Joker back in there and the Dark Knight and all your Christopher Nolan dog shit CIA allegories. It's crammed in there into the lower fuselage of the psychologies that I'm talking about, right? So you follow that Nolan thing back through the American Psycho CCP, just generic smear of white male thing stuff, successful. I'm sure Trump will appreciate this. You know, it's kind of like a generic, what thing? Go to ATM, get money, and then apply, well, he's a serial killer. Yes, you've asserted this. Why, though? See, usually in other stories where there is one, there's a reason. There's some sort of topological reason for the character to have this connotation of drama. So think about the criminal psychological catch-22 there. It doesn't make sense, so it is psychological propaganda by default. You don't realize this. Follow Jared Leto into Fight Club. See Brad Pitt there, right? Follow him into Quentin Tarantino's films, right? Follow Quentin Tarantino to, let's see, that scene in we're on Greece now. We came in through Greece's linguistics. But we're in that scene in True Romance. Still quoting allegory, unfortunately. But we're not going to play the scene. I'm just going to reference it. Yeah, who cares? Fuck you, eat shit. You know, it's garbage. There's nothing in the briefcase. It's crap art. It's to brainwash you against an encroachment. So, you know, keep that in mind. So, you look at that scene, but don't look at it. That's the invasion of what? Cut out of history. What does that speak to? Time. Well, at the behest of whom? The parasymbiote out of China, right? Out of the stars. Animism. Animism first, that scene second, right? Grecian alphabet. Bezos, right? So, you forward time, you know, in novelistic linear time experienceation, in the encroachment towards that sort of singularity and confirmation bias of novelistic whatever in the other talk, you look back in, right, that entrance in linguistics is profoundly expressed forward in self-reflexive with no doorway out, terminating at Einstein and no further. So you have the band of Greece to Einstein, 0-100 in linguistics band. When does Greece start? It's hard to say, right? Is it before or after? Is that the antediluvian period or a misnomer and doesn't compute with the Egyptian thing, and you have a clusterfuck, just like the Jurassic period sort of, you know, pull one out here, stick one in there, graze, this 50-ton thing doesn't work with this 100-ton thing. Shove it out here, stick it in there, right? See that morphogenetic field talk, Rupert Sheldrake with that context now, right? Where do we leave off in logic here? See, oh yeah, Greece. Yeah, see how that works? You go back to the Grecian alphabet, right? Just very basically, ohm, up, down. Look at the Whitney Cummings name. That's very important. You know, what's in a name? In the Bible, a clever man. The pattern of the devil is exactingly like the Ryman and Stokes Napier. Like the geometric pattern of mechanical angels. The Grecian to what? What did I say? Banking market. Right? Housing market. See the euro. See it without time as a binder in the large-scale fluid dynamic topology of terrestrial economic motion. So the entrance of physics choice symbology that terminates into Einstein's Poincare conjecture, only two-dimensional flat plane, and I'm talking to Prince at Calvary, and he can't understand non-terminus physics, right? And subsequently is a victim to dogmas, right? Within the two-dimensional allowance of dogmas of there's two towers, now there's one, right? That's the Poincare conjecture. And Star Wars technological progress, right there in front of your face, you know. Cell phones, battery you can remove, now you can't, drop it, it's garbage. There's the trade expression. It's on all the time, even when you turn it off, right? So you see, like, the fluid dynamic expression of intentionality and interaction being kind of parasitic, you know, and that sort of interfacing, as a normality, you know, necessity isn't in the economy of engagement at any level of industry, and it's a psychological entrance that then enters through the code, and then into the observer domain. You might not even know this is the case. That's because you sit in a stream that has many fish in it, and some of them are injecting intentional pattern, right? Some of it's psychological, and you know, this is to the Indian set, I guess. In the side chain, you're polytheist, they're like monosodium glutamate, and then pluralistic homeopath up here, the fake homeopathy down here, paradoxical at the salt level, you know, salt of the earth, right? At the temporal expression of, let's talk about that right now. Temporal expression of monosodium glutamate consumption. You have the twin towers, disodium insulate, and then guano, right? Right? Why is it so expensive and in this cheap product? Huh? That shit is crazy expensive, right? It's batshit crazy expensive. Why is it in this fucking ramen noodle? That's a little biochemistry where, you know, Sundar Pichai, just do a 5-second search. How much is guano? How the fuck is it in this cheap ramen noodle? Now, there's two examples. Basic foodstuffs. Twin towers. Psychosexual into the Chinese patriarchy, right? So 1, 2, 3, you know, take AI and logic. Boy, you could just go in with that Turing test example, and maybe to accentuate some sort of, you know, the pluralistic, you know, refraction out into, you know, there's multiplicitous marriages and stuff. If you're on the waterline of, you know, pi over, you know, 2207 over pi would be a combinant, right? And so what do you express in Turing, right? Which is, are you just pi, or can you experience and understand non-terminus physics? The reason a pluralistic, complex autonomic organism attached to a parasymbiote who's more ontologically powerful psychologically at a morphogenetic connective level in the background of something it doesn't even know is there, so it simply isn't allowed to think above the Poincare conjecture, E equals mc squared. David can't think outside the box on purpose. That's why Prince at Calvary can't understand the Poincare conjecture outside of. I'm talking about non-terminus physics. He can't understand it. So that's at the beginning of Blade Runner, where we're not concerned with killing anyone necessarily, but you know, this is a general fluid dynamic at this scale of infrastructure and world building, you have a pluralistic and not a monotheistic alien topology to deal with as a species. You have RGB dictating 2 to you to experience, which is E equals MC squared. And thus the equation of saluting the dog, which is not a god or a dog or a man or a synthioid. It is purely, holistically, the expression of the grays in human form as a biosyntheoid, but wholly mechanical and not necessarily concerned with. So you get the industry of, well, when does this happen? So many children. You notice we experience a lot of genetics, right? There's no reason that that person can't reproduce through the paradigm of can move through the domain binders of Jurassic Park, the ship, phase shifting from gray to ship. The ship is the gray, right? And genetics, so it is mind and matter fused, but not with soul. It has no vision. It's pi over 22 progressive within the construct domain, not even with 22. It's just pi non-terminus in influence output, insofar as it's an induction channel of paradox. That's what pi is. So pi is fire harmonically. That's why you can treat it, right, symptomatically with, like maybe LRADs with the same geometry stereo as 22/7 stacked geometries at a distance, right? You're treating a frequency response, right? Such so much is the same issue with these people, right? They hate water. Insofar as the fluid dynamic, a cat hates water, right? Insofar as the fluid dynamic penultimate non-terminus expression of it in medias. They don't like to hear it. It's like a dog whistle. Get it? So that's kind of, and you reset, anything that's non-terminus and considering of what? The industry of finance, where you have a progressive, you don't even have pi defined and you're already using it, right? It has no propensity for upward momentum, so your market has a fire progression and then a compounding necessity for illusory markets to stack on to maintenance its upward trajectory continuance, right? Mercury never, right? And so the psychology also progressively goes to hell, right? Literally. And you got The Walking Dead and Fireworld still. But keep in mind, Animal Farm, Mark Zuckerberg, there's the grays up above Mark Zuckerberg and his, Chinese food restaurant, and here's above the lodge, right? So that's where it ends, kind of right there. Tritely and simply. And you go, oh, Henry Miller. It's always been this way. Deal with it. It's like the physics version of the Vedic scriptures without it, if you want to consume it that way necessarily in certain facets, but not at all. I mentioned polytheism. That's a basic, you run an RGBC religion. Western religion is RGB, right? Chinese food is RG, right? And, don't watch that David Bowie video where he's covered in blue all of a sudden because you're watching a TV. What is black magic? You know, and he sucks you into a point care conjecture, loving the alien. And he's like, I'm Holly Golightly on the... But do you see him now? Don't reference him anymore. That's part of the Davidian Poincare conjecture. You know, puppy dog tail on the thing, not so pretty anymore. What's she killing off screen? She's so beautiful, Darwin Prince. To Hollywood. And Dorothy fucking the midgets. And this, a satanic rub in linguistics, what she's doing off screen is probably a baby. As it's so high value in optic. And it is a satanic rub. So we don't want to reference Hollywood necessarily anymore for allegory forward, as it connotates what? Bad logic, Reynolds, that leads you into Jurassic Park or 2001, and you're holding a cell phone, right? But you see what archetypes are. Those are the high-frequency traded walls of history, right? And, but the walls of history are of stone. And that requires some of constant modulation because that's the news. You know, black, white, and red all over, right? Well, that's the reason they say that. The reason it exists is to encapsulate tyranny in its current paradigm of singular monosodium glutamate news, right? So make the Twin Towers go poof back in your head, all of a sudden out of the, you know, only choice of RG, so you can see that that's the case here, right? That's the most quintessed and most profoundly imposed psychology software on the lower rungs of experience caste-wise. Right? If you want to consult Vedic fluid-dynamic topology of psychology, but time and money, whatever, is a misnomer, and the sorting of the hat of the fields of the necessary this or that. You know, that's the difference between, you know, you see Henry Miller in the food everywhere in the grocery store, or you have horse blinders on, right? And you walk to the gate, and you chase the rabbit through Alice in Wonderland, looking for truth in the Tweedledees and Tweedledums. And at the end, you're left with 322. She's a queen of hearts, isn't she? And she's working for the Chinese. 322 equals a Chinese food restaurant. Richard Attenborough is explaining over ice cream to Laura Dern, you know, Chinese patriarchy doesn't have a big dick. That's the tell that the parasymbiote in the psychosexual argument, you understand big dick argument, it's constantly inundated to your eyeballs via high frequency refraction in metasystems, essentially data systems, feed to your eyeballs. Since 2012, in refracting sexuality, etc., as a result of this intentionality, or before not present necessarily to a point of relevance. So that's the scalar without emotional connotation, parasymbiotic encroachment. Go back to true romance now. Greek, Einstein, right? So that approximate fusation is 0 to 100 in linguistics. 918 China, right, to COVID-19 is your genetic 0 and 100, right? In the interdomain, 0 to 100 genetics, and signal band is 1904, 7, 2012, 15, 2024, ...